Any objection?
Straight ahead, it's a wrap. The Texas legislative session is coming to a close, and we'll look at the bills that will impact you and your family, from education to property tax relief, bail reform, and more. Sounding off, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Congressman Brandon Gill discuss the impact of tax and spending cuts now that the President Trump's, quote, big beautiful bill passed in the House. And Beto is back. We ask former Congressman Beto O'Rourke if he's running for office again next year. Good morning to you. I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts now. Hello and happy Sunday, and welcome to Eye on Politics. Tomorrow is the last day of the regular Texas legislative session, and it's been quite the session when you consider the impact on public schools, property tax relief, criminal justice, and more.
It's a record. I believe it's a world record.
Texas senators celebrate the additional $10 billion of relief from your school property taxes this year that they and lawmakers in the House passed this session. The homestead exemption for most Texas homeowners will now rise from $100,000 to $140,000. And for people over 65, the homestead exemption will rise to $200,000. Exemptions for business property taxes will also go up from $2,500 to $125,000 next year.
Every Texan will benefit from this. Black, white, brown, purple, pink will benefit from this.
We have done historic, not just big things, historic things to create property tax relief for Texans.
In November, residents will have the final say by voting to make it permanent in the Texas Constitution. Another priority bill headed to the governor's desk will inject a record $8.5 billion in new money for the state's public schools. About half of that, $4.2 billion, will go to permanent pay raises for teachers with 3 or more years' experience. The legislature is also sending school districts an extra $500 million to give pay raises to entry-level teachers and non-administrative staff.
It is unprecedented in this state.
Lawmakers also approved legislation to crack down further on disruptive students, now including those in kindergarten through 2nd grade. They also passed voluntary prayer in schools and requiring school districts to display a poster or a framed copy of the 10 Commandments in every classroom. The ACLU of Texas is among the organizations promising to challenge the law in court. And lawmakers in both the Senate and House passed unanimously a bill known as the Uvalde Strong Act by State Representative Don McLaughlin, who was mayor of Uvalde 3 years ago when a gunman shot and killed 19 elementary school students and their 2 teachers. The bill requires school districts and law enforcement to train jointly and establish protocols to respond to active shooter incidents.
They have to have these meetings, they have to work together, and they have to have this training.
Aside from education, the state is providing $1.5 billion in incentives over the next decade to attract TV and film production to better compete against other states. Another priority of Governor Abbott's is headed to his desk: bail reform. It requires judges to deny bail in more criminal cases and allows prosecutors a chance to appeal the judge's decisions on bail. And in what has turned out to be a very controversial bill, the state will ban all THC products statewide starting in September. After the state allowed hemp sales to support farmers, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said new smoke shops exploited a loophole in that law. Stores and businesses that sell products have pushed back and hope the governor will veto it. But Patrick said businesses and stores are selling dangerous products.
These are bad actors. These are people who want to kill your kids, and they don't give a damn.
In response, Thomas Winstanley, executive vice president of edibles.com, sent a statement saying, quote, "The lieutenant governor's statement is not only deeply irresponsible, it's dangerously misleading. To characterize an entire industry as bad actors who want to kill your kids is a flagrant misrepresentation that borders on satire if it weren't so inflammatory coming from an elected official." The only bill the legislature is required to pass is the budget. Coming up, we ask former Congressman Beto O'Rourke if he is running for public office again. But next, Members of Congress from North Texas sound off on what President Trump has called, quote, the big beautiful bill of tax and spending cuts. When Eye on Politics comes right back. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. The U.S. Senate is now considering the tax and spending cuts passed by the House in what President Trump has called his big beautiful bill. But that's not how Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett describes it. She voted against the measure, as did every Democrat. Plus, the Congresswoman tells us about a new higher profile position she is running for on one of the major committees on Capitol Hill.
It's a disaster for the American people. And when I say American people, while you just introduced me as a Democratic representative, at the end of the day, when you look at my title, it's just U.S. representative. And this is a disaster for anyone who is not from the top 1%. They decided that they would throw a few crumbs in there to make people believe that they were doing something great for them as it relates to the tax side of this reconciliation bill, the kind of idea of no tax on tips and things like that. It's more so a game. The reality is that we are looking at approximately 14 million people that may lose their health care. And last time I checked, most people that are struggling with health care, whether they have it or don't, those bills are usually a little bit bigger than the average tax bill, that is for sure. Or those people that are relying on things such as SNAP benefits. The amount of people that are going to go hungry, unfortunately, we have a hunger issue in this country in the first place. And SNAP is literally short for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, right? It is supplemental. And the way that the federal government sees that is that $6 a day is enough to supplement you per person. And we know in reality that it's not. So the idea that you would go through and you would like gut critical things that literally people rely on to live, also that say maybe somebody can go and buy yet another jet or another yacht. It just doesn't seem right because it isn't right. This is literally a reverse Robin Hood of literally stealing from those that need resources the most and giving it to those that are rich.
So I've heard Republicans say that all the Democrats who voted against this voted to raise everybody's taxes. What do you say to that?
I say it's a lie and it's a game. Here's the deal. You had every Democrat lockstep recognizing that this was going to inflict harm, and so they voted against it. And we know that this was just about taking care of the billionaires. It's a billionaire tax scam. But you also had Republicans that didn't vote for it in the House.
I want to ask you about the Medicaid cuts because I've asked the Republican members of Congress a lot about this. And what they tell me is the growth of the program was just getting out of control. And they say that they wanted to rein it in because people should work, able-bodied people should be working, and they're just getting the benefits. And they want to focus more on pregnant women, low income, and disabled. So what do you say to that?
I say that they are really good at spinning it. The thing is, they are trying to use that to justify the tax cuts that they have built in for the ultra wealthy. But here's the problem, Jack. They still got to raise the debt ceiling.
President Trump himself on another network criticized you and called you a low IQ individual. What was your reaction to that? And what do you say to that?
He's such a loser. You know, and I say that and I'm laughing, but I really do believe that he's a loser. Because I truly, number one, can't imagine being the president of the United States, which arguably historically has been the most powerful country in the world. And I'm worried about a rising sophomore or a sophomore in Congress. Like, I can't really see me taking up that much airtime or space on that person. And listen, whenever people start to attack you based on things that are not of substance, that's when you know that you're really getting under their skin and that there is nothing to attack. And when he wants to take an IQ test and challenge me, I am down.
Congressman Connolly, who was the ranking member on House Oversight, a committee on which you sit on, as you know, obviously, he recently passed away.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are wondering if you are going to run for ranking member, or do you have your sights set on higher office here in Texas?
I am running for a ranker, for sure.
Oh, you are?
I am running. We are working on pulling it all together, but most likely either next week or before my colleagues get back, they will have what we call a Dear Colleague, which is a letter that they will all receive laying out why it is that I believe I am the best candidate for this moment for this particular position.
Republican Congressman Brandon Gill of Flower Mound voted for the bill, and he explains why. He says he's not too concerned that the Senate will make major changes to it.
Break this bill down into its component parts, and each one are things that most Republicans all agree with. This provides massive funding for border security, for instance. It increases the number of ICE agents by 10,000. That's a 50% increase in ICE's footprint. It provides funding for the border wall, for river barriers, for all sorts of border security measures. It provides enough funding for up to, and maybe more, 1 million deportations every single year. It provides funding for our military as well, which has been so beaten down after 4 years of the Biden administration. It repeals massive portions of the Green New Deal. I think we could go further, and perhaps we will whenever the Senate takes a look at it, but that's a huge win for Republicans. It also provides work requirements for Medicaid so that working age, able-bodied people should either be working or seeking work if they're going to receive Medicaid benefits. It also takes off up to 1.4 million illegal aliens off of our Medicaid rolls. These are huge wins. All put together, of course, take all of those wins, put those aside, a permanent extension of the 2017 tax cuts, the biggest tax cuts for working class families in American history. That is a huge conservative win. It's going to put more money back in the pockets of working class families. This is something that I think we'll see broad support for.
Now, the Democrats, as you know, they all voted against it. They have said that basically this is cutting people who are on Medicaid so that billionaires could get additional tax cuts. How do you respond to that?
Well, what I would say is that we are reforming Medicaid to make sure that it is sustainable and viable for the core Medicaid population. In other words, what we're doing is protecting Medicaid. We've got just shy of 5 million, about 4.8 million Americans who are working age and able-bodied, who are on Medicaid but are not working or seeking work. That's a problem. Most Americans agree with us that there should be work requirements to receive Medicaid or to receive food stamps. There are 1.4 million illegal aliens that are on Medicaid right now. We're taking them off. So what we're doing is shoring up this program so that it'll survive in the long term for the core population who needs it.
And the core population being pregnant women?
Pregnant women, the disabled, and the poor. Here's the difference between Democrats and Republicans as we're looking at the economy and how we measure success. Democrats measure success by the number of people that they can get on welfare rolls, on the public dole. Republicans measure success by the number of people that we can lift out of poverty, that we can lift off of the welfare rolls to make independent and self-sustaining, and that's what this bill helps do.
So now, as you know, the Senate has control of this bill. How concerned are you that the Senate will make a lot of changes to this on what was already very difficult for the House to get to pass?
Well, we have a narrow majority in the House, but they also have a narrow majority in the Senate. We only have 53 Republicans there, so they've got their work to do as well. Now, I think that every single Republican in the House and in the Senate agrees that this is a bill that we have got to get passed. Now, whenever you follow it on a day-by-day or hour-by-hour basis and you see how the sausage is made, it looks like a messy process. There's all kinds of negotiations. There's back and forths. We're working long hours. The Senate's going to do the same thing. But ultimately, they're going to come up with a product that can pass through the Senate. They're going to send it back to the House. I think that they're going to make positive changes to this bill.
Like what?
Maybe they're going to look at the SALT tax deduction, which rewards far-left blue states by allowing them to deduct their state and local income taxes from their federal taxes. That is basically a handout for New York and California, allowing those states to provide welfare for illegal aliens, to pay for abortions, and all kinds of things that the people of Texas 26 and conservatives across the country don't agree with. I think that's one thing they're going to touch. I think they may go deeper into work requirements for Medicaid. We took a pretty good chunk there. It was a very good effort. I think they're going to go further. You know, another thing that I think they may touch is rolling back more of the Green New Deal. We pulled back hundreds of billions of dollars of Green New Deal tax subsidies, which is really corporate welfare. I think that they're going to go further. Those are all things that Republicans should agree with, and I think we'll be able to get it passed.
Up next, former Congressman Beto O'Rourke is back, but will he run for office again? We asked him when Eye on Politics returns. Now to the court ruling that blocked President Trump's tariffs. It angered the president, but relieved many businesses. For now, a U.S. appeals court has paused the lower court's ruling, restoring the president's ability to impose tariffs. Sarah Jenkins takes a closer look at the ruling in this week's brief.
The court's decision was a major legal blow to President Trump's global tariff agenda. It included his so-called Liberation Day tariffs and earlier levies on China, Mexico, and Canada. The court said the International Emergency Economic Powers Act that Trump cited does not allow him to impose tariffs. The ruling also stated that tariffs aimed at addressing trade imbalances should fall under non-emergency legislation and that the law does not grant the president unlimited power to impose such tariffs. It also upheld that tariffs targeting specific threats like drug trafficking and illegal immigration are not legally justified under the orders. Although the court's decision is temporarily halted, the Trump administration could still turn to the Supreme Court to advance the president's trade policy.
Thank you, Sarah. Former Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke says he's considering running for office next year. He's been making the rounds, holding town hall meetings here in North Texas, including this one earlier this month in Garland, and also across the state. O'Rourke has also been doing interviews, and we asked him if he's going to run for office again, and if so, which position, U.S. Senate or governor?
This moment's bigger than a political office or a campaign or any person, certainly myself included. There are a lot of folks, Jack, in Texas who are really hurting right now. They're being hurt by this administration, whether it's cuts to the VA or proposed cuts to Medicaid or Social Security, or turning away loaded trucks from the food bank in Amarillo. So the thing to do right now is to show up for one another and bring people together, regardless of party affiliation, Democrats, Republicans, independents. As you mentioned, we're doing it in Wichita Falls, in Denton. We were in Garland on Monday night, but we're going everywhere to show up and be with everyone. And I really think there's power in bringing people together right now.
At the very first interview you did, you were asked if you were going to run for U.S. Senate. You said no. And then at the Denton rally or town hall, you were asked by a member of the crowd, are you going to run for U.S. Senate? And you said, and let me make sure I get this right, you told the crowd that you would run for U.S. Senate if the people of Texas want. What does that mean?
It means that if I am the right person to run for that seat, if I can do the most good for the people of Texas by actually winning and being able to serve them in that position of public trust, then that's something I should certainly look at. But I don't know, well, I do know that I'm nowhere close to understanding the answer to those questions. And I don't think anyone can really, unless they've gone out and listened to and been with and worked alongside the people that they want to serve and represent. And so, Jack, for me, I'm pretty open to any role that's going to be useful. That could be a candidate. It could be continuing to run Powered by People, which is registering hundreds of thousands of voters across the state of Texas. It could be getting behind great people who are running for these really important positions across the state, from school board to U.S. Senate and everything in between.
So what criteria and what factors will you use to determine whether you should run for an office?
You know, I don't have a spreadsheet or a list or a set of data points that I'm going to be looking at, but I really, and I mean this as genuinely and honestly as I can, and I hope this is coming across, I just want to be useful and I want to be helpful. I want to be able to look my kids in the eye and say, hey, when all this was going down in America in 2025, here's everything I did to make sure that your future and the future of your kids and their kids was secured, that we were able to pass on the last best hope of Earth to the generations that follow ours. And I'm well aware that, I've run for races and I've won them for U.S. Congress 3 times. I've run for races and I've lost them. And in some of those cases, even though we lost, we helped people down ballot do great things. And I'm well aware that there have been years where I've been helpful, where my name hasn't been on the ballot at all. So I'm looking at all of those different scenarios. And I guess, Jack, as I continue to listen to people, which is the most important thing I think I can do, and travel the state, that will be incredibly clarifying for the path that I pursue. And I'm really agnostic as to what that looks like. I don't need to be a candidate. I don't need to hold office, but I do need to help Texas and this country at this moment of truth. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can. And I'm taking nothing off the table.
And don't forget, you can watch all our full interviews we did for today's show on our CBS Texas YouTube page. Once you're there, hit the subscribe button. And that's all for Eye on Politics this week. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next week. And from all of us here, have a great Sunday.